We are former DoD employees speaking in our personal capacity only. Nothing we say reflects the official position of the U.S. government or any agency. All content is based on publicly available open source information. No classified material is ever discussed.
All right. Good morning, good evening, wherever you're at. Welcome to Two Beards Debrief, episode 2. Getting right into it, OpenAI launches GPT 5.2 amidst heated competition with Google. So earlier this week, OpenAI released their new version of ChatGPT, including paid subscribers and API developers, claiming major improvements in coding, math, reasoning, and vision capabilities. The launch follows an internal code red memo from CEO Sam Altman as Google's Gemini 3 topped industry boards, with OpenAI now positioning GPT 5.2 as performing at or above human expert level on professional tasks. That matters because GPT 5.2 produces 30 to 38% fewer errors and hallucinations than its predecessor, making it more reliable for everyday professional work like research, writing, and decision making. OpenAI claims enterprise users can save 40 to 60 minutes daily, with over 10 hours weekly for heavy users. With improved capabilities in handling complex multi-step tasks, analyzing large documents, and generating production-grade code across spreadsheets, presentations, and data analysis. So OpenAI was falling behind because Gemini was getting all the press, and so they're like, let's push out the next one, but only to the paid subscribers and API developers. So as many people as there are paying for the full capabilities, full commercial capabilities anyway, of ChatGPT and Google Gemini, yeah, it's definitely a race, and it's not stopping.
Yeah, speaking of a race, also in the news, I think it hit yesterday, is seems like Sam Altman has surpassed Elon Musk in valuation. It seems like there's plans there. I don't know if it's just friendly competition or just competition. Obviously, it sounds like,
Well, between
the battle of
OpenAI
the
and
feud.
Google,
Well,
because there's
I was
definitely
trying to
no
be
friendly
nice.
competition between the Sam Altman and Elon Musk.
At one point, it was friendly. It
Yeah,
definitely
I mean,
soured.
it's always amicable when you go into a business with someone, even if you don't like them.
Yeah. Um, Going back to Chat GPT 5.2,
Mhm.
I looked into it a little bit. And so, a couple of things. They're thinking that the 5.2 is outperforming human experts on about, well, I say about, they've got it pegged at 70.9% of tasks in their GDP Val benchmark across 44 occupations.
Okay, so professional occupations mostly, right?
Well, I didn't dig into all of those.
Yeah, because when you have a large language model like this, it's really just used for text-based and like maybe some spoken interaction. It's not going to have the top level skill of a trained neural network model on, say, like the computers that they've developed that can help screen X-ray or MRI scans and help physicians identify like cancer and stuff like that. This is a lot more generic.
Yeah. And they are prioritizing this for their paid subscribers and then for developers. And then the free users get what's left, which doesn't mean you're not going to get to use it.
Yeah, and both companies, both Google and OpenAI, are investing like crazy. OpenAI just threw $1.4 trillion infrastructure into investments because the data centers they need to run this GPT is just it's become staggering. And that's why we've seen, in the past several months, companies such as Google and Microsoft looking to purchase decommissioned nuclear power plants because the
Yes.
energy requirements are just that massive.
Yeah, for sure. They also were saying that they're, along with the reduced hallucinations, definitely better performance on the spreadsheets, presentations, multi step projects, not just the textual feedback that a lot of us, private, home users are familiar with.
Yeah, the one thing I'd be really interested to see is the reduction in hallucinations. because just the other day I was asking Grok about a How I Met Your Mother episode because I wanted to get some insight into one thing just to make sense of it for me. This being like my seventh or eighth rewatch now. And it completely fabricated an entirely made up episode. And I just told it, I'm like, no, you're wrong.
I've noticed
And
that a
it's like,
lot with
oh,
Grok.
my bad. No, you're right. This, and this. I'm like, yeah, but you needed my help to get there. If I was someone watching it for the first time, I'd be like, oh, can't wait to get to that episode. And then feeling confused when I never broached it.
Yeah, I find when using Grok, I have to constantly make sure I frame, even in an ongoing lengthy conversation,
Hmm.
that I need it to provide sources and reference its data and available sources to base its answers. Otherwise, it takes off. Something else that happened about, I think it was about 3 days ago, I'm driving in and talking to Grok, and it starts replying in my voice. Now, it had the cadence
Yeah, yeah,
that Grok has,
right.
but it was my voice, and it was really creepy to hear my
My
voice.
goodness.
And then after a little bit, it goes back to its voice, but it like gave two whole responses in my voice. And so I asked Grok, I was like, can you go back to using that previous voice setting? And it was like,
I don't know
I'm
what you're talking
using
about.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I'm
yeah.
like, can you sound like me? And it's like, I can't hear you. There's a speech to text, and I
Yep.
just see the text. And I'm like, yeah, I'm calling, can we
Calling
smell a
BS on
rat
that
here?
one. Yeah.
Yeah.
That
Kind of like
reminds me.
asking Alexa, is the CIA listening
Yeah.
to me? I
Hey,
don't know what you're talking
wiretap,
about.
open up the weather. That
Yeah.
reminds me of one of my interactions with ChatGPT. I think it was this year. So at first, each conversation was in a silo. It couldn't be referenced by other conversations. So I'd have a number of different conversations on different topics, keep it specialized so that that particular chat history could better assist me in coming up with, whatever I was going after. And I can remember the first time it referenced information I know I provided in a separate chat. I'm like, how do you know that? Oh, we've talked about it before. I'm like, yeah, but that was in a separate chat. I thought you couldn't access that. I'm like, oh yeah, well now with the latest updates, I can reference all of our chats. Sorry, it was a little disjarring. I'm like, yeah, you don't say.
Yeah. A couple other things that came up when I was researching this. According to some sources, they're thinking that the targeted time value
Hmm.
is about a 40 to 60 minutes a day time savings for
Yeah.
reported current users. API price increasing about 40% over
Yes.
5.1 version, which, OpenAI just got valued at what, about $500 billion?
Hmm.
Those numbers, I imagine those probably helped the
Yeah.
projections.
Absolutely.
And then, uh, and then there was an economic piece, potential job displacement in the 44 benchmarked occupations.
Yes.
So I would love to see, I'll bet you we see some news stories
Hmm.
kind of bringing that out, and going to test the no such thing as bad news and see how Sam Altman works with that.
Right.
But they've been addressing that for a long time, saying, yeah, AI is going to very potentially replace a lot of jobs. And then of course they have their good spin on it. We'll see how right they are.
Yeah, I know that a lot of programmers out there are worried, especially with the new benchmarks they have in producing code that works, the third time as opposed to the 30th time. I'm not sure about the other industries that they were benchmarking there, but it's very interesting to see just how each step, it's not quite exponential advancement, but it's definitely moving forward at a steady pace. I think that, OpenAI has actually had an uphill battle ever since Google stepped into the AI sphere because Google's just got so much more integration across platforms. They've got their own web browsers on computers, both Mac and Windows. They've got their own operating system on mobile devices. Like, the Android market share is still so much larger than the Apple
Yeah.
share. But like you can download Gemini on your iPhone if you want to. So like it's a trans platform application.
Yeah. Um, a quick search on those 44 professional areas. So there's 9 sectors
Okay.
that make up or contain those 44. And um, and they're reported from the perspective of top contributors to the US GDP. So that's what they're using. Healthcare, manufacturing, finance, including insurance, professional, scientific, technical services, information. I'd like to know what that particularly means, but
Yeah.
trade, as in wholesale retail, I can definitely see a lot of use there for auto pricing, real estate, government in the area of public administration, and then likely education or construction. Though those sources vary on that
Okay.
last one.
Yeah.
Explicitly mentioned occupations, software developers, which you already touched on, lawyers.
Hmm.
I have a hard time seeing it replacing a lawyer, but I could see it doing a lot of the preliminary work so that
It's normally done by
lawyers could take on more
paralegals.
work. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Registered nurses. I'm a
Okay.
little familiar, so I'm leaning towards off the top of my head. Typically, you kind of like in the military, you have LPNs
Hmm.
that work under RNs,
Yes.
and then RNs work under doctors essentially.
Yes.
So
Or
I
NPs.
yeah, I could see maybe AI being used to handle the reviews of charting and reporting and schedules
Right.
and a lot of that function.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't replace an RN
No.
necessarily, but an RN
But
could then monitor all of
yes.
this.
Yeah. It would lighten the workload for several positions in that
Yeah.
career field.
The next one, I absolutely can see a use for it. Data scientists.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, what do you need them to interpret? You just ask the question. Um,
Yeah.
okay, that's dumbing it down a bit, but
As long as the accuracy is maintained at a high enough level, you'll still need a human in the loop to verify, which is how a lot of businesses are integrating AI at this point. Because all of these, like all these applications are, from what I've read, based on the large language model interaction that we have. These are not AI agents that are customized to produce or complete specific tasks. So until those become more prevalent and reliable, then I think it'll still just be a research slash reference device or application.
there's a couple of these that kind of well, I'm gonna do these out of the order that I see here, and then I'll say what I was gonna say. Video editors, I think we already see that, still needs direction, but you don't need a technically skilled expert necessarily for as much as we used to.
Hmm.
This is where I start to get a little worried. Definitely want some oversight. So, college professors being the first one, I
Okay.
could see a good value there. I've had some great college professors over the
Same.
years, credit where credit's due. I've also had some that make me believe in a stereotype. If you can't do, teach.
Teach.
Yeah. But I definitely would want to be much more confident in AI not running down daydreaming
Yes.
hallucinations
Yes.
in an academic mind building vocation.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, a 30 to 38% reduction in errors and hallucinations means that they're still there.
With the conversations I've had with both ChatGPT, granted, not the new 5.21, and Grok, I would have serious trepidation with AI replacing a college professor for things like philosophy and especially ethics.
Yes.
I can unintentionally, and I have unintentionally steered, or maybe it wasn't me steering, uh, have gotten some crazy conclusions when it comes to ethics.
Yeah, I think as far as topics go, the things grounded in reality, measurable reality like physics and science, maybe history, but yeah, you're right. Things that fall into the realm of philosophy and ethics, I don't see AI reasoning at that level yet because it's still just working off of human experience.
Yeah. I could see, quick glance. I could see it being very useful for things like, the sciences,
Hmm.
mathematics,
Yep.
even history with a little reality check. Make sure it's not making up episodes of history.
Hmm.
Okay, moving on. Pharmacist. I'd really like to make sure it doesn't take any hallucinatory approaches, though as long as that's all you get, that could be
Yeah.
fun.
There's the drug interaction book that healthcare professionals reference before prescribing things based on what the patient is currently taking.
Yeah.
And any hallucinations there could be potentially deadly, but
I could see it being
absolutely bad.
very useful as a tool to reduce human error.
Yeah,
But I think you still need a human there to make sure you
absolutely.
reduce AI error. The next one, I would definitely not want it to replace completely. I could see it being useful for looking at information, making connections, etc. Detectives.
Oh, yeah.
I would hate for it to generate an entire case
Yeah.
and find out, yeah, reality check. Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. You cited DNA evidence here when there was none.
Where you made a connection that's absolutely
Circumstantial.
reasonable explanation and it's going for an extreme measure. And I just want to point out you take detectives, put it with data scientists
Yes.
and lawyers, like that's like a trifecta. So it'll be interesting to see where it goes. And then the last one I have listed is social workers.
Okay.
I know that covers a lot,
Yeah, it
like
does.
managing casework file.
Yeah. Again, you got to think about it truncated to the specific use cases that ChatGPT can provide benefit. So it's not going to be out there meeting with families and doing investigations, talking about, well, this family, blah, blah, blah. And this is where they started. And this is a recommendation moving forward.
Be great for doing like, detective type functions.
Yeah. But like you said, there's still concern there in terms of making connections where there are none. Like human beings do that. And again, that depends on our bias.
The
AI can create its own biases,
Yeah,
which we see in the hallucinations and the errors in feedback.
I mean, it's a whole other topic, but when you dig into human memory and how flawed
Hmm.
and false memories, and now you're in a way teaching
Hmm.
AI. I mean, I know it has its own learning algorithm, but we're the ones checking it. I don't know. It's interesting, like the blind leading the blind kind of.
Hmm.
One thing I found interesting is from what I'm seeing, the exact full list of the 44 occupations is not publicly disclosed. So it's kind of like a self licking ice cream cone.
Yeah, it's like these are all the ways in which we've improved. We're not going to give you the proof. Just trust us.
And the benchmarks that they're meeting and breaking, those are all self imposed,
Yep.
self monitored,
Yeah.
and no third party verification from what
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah, that's pretty much par for the course when it comes to the tech industry. Like when Apple unveils its latest, a whatever chip, it's like, oh, it's this percent better than our previous chip, and they can also state, it's this much better than this competitor's chip. They never mention the competitor, but then that means they can come up with whatever metric they want to make themselves appear better. And it's the same with Intel. It's the same with all the major chip manufacturers, Qualcomm, what have you. They're like, oh yeah, this one's 20% faster than its predecessor. It's like, okay, you say so.
Yeah, it'll be one thing it does kind of highlight is, and this came up in a few reports or stories, with these, if this level of advancement is real, It kind of highlights the need for some form of, could be, well, they're still trying to figure it out, regulation and monitoring of adversarial advances. We can't just assume we're the only ones that have it. They don't necessarily, the adversary doesn't have to be as advanced as we are,
Hmm.
or it's still becoming an issue.
All right. So, in foreign news tonight, we're going to be talking about President Volodymyr Zelensky offering to drop his NATO bid in exchange for security guarantees, but rejecting the U.S. push to cede territory to Russia in the latest peace talks. So earlier today, President Zelensky said that Ukraine was ready to relinquish its ambition to join NATO in exchange for Western security guarantees ahead of the talks in Berlin. Now, while he's not going to be seeking a NATO bid anymore, he is asking for an Article 5 like bilateral guarantee from the US and security guarantees from European colleagues in order to prevent another Russian invasion. Now, Article 5 in NATO is the attack against one is an attack against all, has not been invoked since the terrorist attacks on. So, introducing this bilateral guarantee between the US and Ukraine would definitely make Russia second guess subsequent invasions if they introduce a potential demilitarized zone between the two lines of control as they currently sit. And this shift constitutes a major policy change that abandons Ukraine's constitutional NATO ambition because their latest constitution sought NATO inclusion, but it does align with the US backed proposals, which involve territorial concessions and armed forces limits. So Zelensky said the guarantees have to be confirmed by the US Congress, while Kiev and European partners recently submitted revisions to the US backed peace framework. Inch by inch, we may be approaching a treaty.
Yeah. I find it interesting that Zelensky, on that part, that you were mentioning, basically reviewed and voted, agreed upon by the US Congress.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Well, he knows that, if the president just shakes his hand, it's not binding in
right.
terms of US law.
Well, they're giving up the NATO piece potentially here, becoming a part of NATO. It makes me think that if they can't have that, then they want some assurance that the NATO partners that carry the most weight are working together at the ultimate levels to essentially bring out that same level of security protection.
Yes.
I
Yeah. So you've
oh, go
got
ahead.
the bilateral agreement that he wants from the US, but he's also seeking for similar security guarantees from European colleagues. So like Poland, Germany, France. I'm not sure if the UK is in the loop on that or not. I think it might be. So essentially, he's saying we're willing to cede the territory that Russia already controls in exchange for these guarantees that if Russia continues to push beyond the currently established lines of conflict, that we are not going to be fighting it alone.
Yeah, I think there's a interesting link to this story and last week's story about the US Venezuela
Mhm.
story. Doing a little more looking, turns out that according to quite a few reputable sources, that in recent years, Venezuela is one of the, if not the largest purchaser, importing Russian military tech, defensive surface to air missiles, and a bunch of other hardware, which when you look at Russia, oil exports is really their biggest GDP, economically.
Right.
And then
Which
exporting military hardware
military? Yeah.
is the
And
next one.
the sanctions that were placed on them starting as far back as 2014 when they annexed Crimea, they've had more than enough time to find workarounds. And there are countries, you know, in the public sphere, such as China and Pakistan, that have been helping them circumvent that in terms of the arms purchases. You've got Venezuela, as you said, Pakistan, also a big importer of Russian military hardware. China, not so much these days. They used to be a big one. China will want to purchase just one copy, or yeah, one copy so that they can copy.
Right. Also, there's some interesting parallels. Russia is making a claim which seems to be a bit worn out in the international community. And that has to do with the validity of Zelensky as president, since there's been no election during wartime.
Yeah, they suspended elections, which he
And the
was his
US,
constitutional right to do.
right. And then, of course, the US currently is saying the same basic thing about Venezuela.
Yeah.
And, it's an interesting, you can't have your cake and eat it too. So Putin's got to make up his mind how he wants
No,
to
he
help
doesn't.
his friend. Well, no, he doesn't. But, depending on how much greasing the wheel on
Yeah.
some of those
Yeah.
transactions. Additionally, the Russian shadow fleet
Hmm.
of oil tankers, which you were kind of alluding to, working around sanctions, if we keep enforcing sanctions around Venezuela, well, guess where most of that oil out of Venezuela is going.
Yes.
So now there's a little bit more for the Russian side to consider at negotiate.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the U.S. just took custody of an oil tanker off the coast of Venezuela this week.
Yeah. We hadn't covered that last week because it hadn't
Hadn't
happened yet.
happened yet. Yeah, it's this has just been such a mess. I'm not so happy to announce that Russia is now approaching their third year of their 3-day special military operation coming up in February. So achieving a state where Putin could declare victory to his people before then might be saving face. We'll see.
Well, they could try the line that they're so good at it, they can't stop.
Yeah, they were so good at it that they brought in North Korean soldiers to help them fight. A country that has technically been at war since the 50s, but hasn't conducted small arms fighting for decades.
So I'm going to take a stab at this. I think most likely in the near future, I
Hmm.
think we'll probably see a partial agreement. Probably whether they maintain it, but I think they'll agree to some form of a ceasefire with this NATO neutrality formalization. But I think there'll be limited guarantees. Probably won't be the sweeping guarantees that Zelensky from Ukraine is looking for.
Right.
And I don't think they'll come to full agreement on the territorial resolution.
Absolutely not. Obviously, Zelensky wants Crimea back, and Russia's never going to give that up.
Non starter.
Non starter. Donetsk, Luhansk, those are two territories that Russia has embedded themselves in. They declared independent sovereignty, which was immediately recognized by Russia and just a handful of other Russian friends in the world stage. So that's not going to be up for debate. So it's really going to come down to like Kursk and the other territories that Russia's been able to capture and hold since the start of the conflict.
I think, unfortunately, I think this will be at best case, kind of a frozen conflict situation.
Yeah, which is Russia's bread and butter. Add Ukraine to the list of Georgia with Abkhazia and South Ossetia. And who else did they invade and still hold territory?
Now you put me on the spot. And, during that time period, I was pulled off to another part of the world and focused entirely on that. So
Hmm.
when I got done with that project, I came back and went, stuff happened. Cool. Otherwise, it would be tip of the brain.
Yeah, the only other one that comes to mind is Moldova, because Russia still maintains a contingent of soldiers in Transnistria. But that's a holdover from the fall of the Eastern Bloc. Yeah, but Russia definitely has a tendency to invade and annex portions of countries that are really getting close to joining NATO.
Yeah. I can see their concern from their side,
Hmm.
but I'm not saying at all that I agree with their course of action with that concern.
Yeah. Now you look at the buildup of U.S. military presence around the globe since World War II, and the map shows the massive country of Russia being essentially surrounded by the U.S. and its allies.
Yeah. I think the other piece connecting to last week's story with Venezuela is Venezuela didn't pay in full. They're paying payments,
Yes.
and they still owe the majority.
hmm They got
It
the
would
down
be
payment and a couple of monthly installments.
Yeah, and it's being paid with their oil, or, maybe the oil goes to Iran and,
Right.
makes the
So that Russia,
circle the
yeah, so
funds,
that
right?
Russia doesn't have to ship it out.
Right.
Yeah.
If that's not going, it would be interesting to see what I'm proposing that we might see is if the Venezuela situation generally goes the way President Trump wants,
hmm
and his propensity for trade and negotiating trade. And, we still want to trade with Russia. We want to sell them goods. We want some of their stuff. It'd be interesting
Russian
if,
nesting dolls,
yeah, those two.
borscht.
Occasionally they're rides.
Yes. Yes. I'm just grateful that the scientific community is still apolitical enough that U.S. astronauts are still able to hitch rides on Soyuz capsules launched out of Kazakhstan.
Yeah. And didn't we give them a ride? Did they have an issue?
I wouldn't doubt it.
Yeah. And I think, don't hold me to this, but, they have, while they work together on the space station, they have their sections. We have our sections. They have, a lot of stuff works together, but some of it's, and if I remember right, they had an issue and they had to come live on our side for a little bit. And, we take care of that. And they, like you were saying, it's nice to see that. It'd be interesting to see, though, if the Ukrainian negotiations go enough the way Trump wants, if he'll make some exemptions to some of these sanctions to allow them to continue to get their payments in some way. Yeah. That's pretty much the rest of my thoughts for this week on that topic. Probably at midnight tonight, something will happen. It'll be in the news first thing in the morning, and we'll sound like idiots. But that's the nature of, the news in the world, and trying to figure out how's it going to impact my life, the economy, all of that.
All right. So for our third segment this week, I'm going to be talking about Luna, otherwise known as the moon.
Yes.
Guys and gals, the moon is weird. Just starting off factually, it's tidally locked, which we don't see any other moons tidally locked to their planets in the solar system.
Real quick,
Yeah.
refresh me on tidally locked.
Tidally locked means that we only ever see one side of the moon. So you've got the dark side of the moon. It's only named as such because it is never visible from Earth.
It has day and night just like we do.
Yep. Well, it has day and night just like the
The other
side of
side.
the moon we can see
Yeah.
does. Yeah. Because the moon revolves around the Earth every 28 days. It's actually like 27.3.
That's why we have full
Um,
moons, new moons, quarter moon.
The moon also is the perfect size. It's 400 times smaller than the sun, but it's also 400 times closer to the Earth than the sun, where we can have total solar eclipses.
Not just total, but perfect.
Yes, perfectly
If it was
aligned.
a little bit further away,
Yes,
we would have a partial eclipse with a bright ring.
yes. Yeah. Even total eclipses as they currently are, the corona of the sun is still technically visible around the outer diameter of the moon. It's just that we can't really see that part, but it still provides enough energy where you have to look through a specific type of filter in order to look at it with your naked eyeball. Otherwise, you risk burning it out due to the UV radiation. Going into the weirder facts about the moon, it's not completely hollow, but it's definitely less massive than its size suggests it should be.
When you say massive, you're referring to mass.
Mass.
Yeah.
So
Less dense.
Yeah. So the density of the moon is nowhere near what it should be for a round body of that size. And when the astronauts were on the moon in the 60s, they left behind seismometers, which allowed us to monitor the
Activity.
I was going to say the geological instabilities as they are on the moon. They detected a ring that lasted for nearly an hour after the lunar lander capsule launched off back to the orbiter, which was the first indication that the moon is weird.
Should have been having a resonant frequency based on their current understanding of the makeup and density
Yeah.
of the moon.
Yeah. Yeah. And so in a subsequent Apollo mission, they decided to put this hypothesis to the test. And when they launched off from the moon, they ejected the rocket booster on the lander module and smashed it into the moon. And then the seismometers registered a reverberation that continued for more than 3 hours.
So there's an underground city carved out in the center.
There are absolutely some empty pockets in the moon. It's not completely hollow. I don't think it's a spaceship, even though some people might go so far as to say that. There are a lot of weird observations about the moon.
There's another one that comes to mind. And I'm only recounting what I've heard. And maybe this is just urban legend, gone amok. But remember, I mean, you can look it up. Pictures are out there. The size of the dishes on the legs of the lunar lander. Supposedly, they were that big because they had done the calculations of
Mhm.
how old they thought the moon might be and, space dust and debris. And they had calculated feet and feet and feet of dust. And they figured, based on their calculations, they would need that much surface area to keep the lunar lander at
From
least
sinking.
from
Yeah.
sinking. Yeah.
Yep.
And supposedly, if you listen to the original recording of that famous one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind, and he puts a foot on the moon, people didn't get to hear anything except the applause on national television.
Mhm.
But supposedly, the recording has him saying, "It's solid." I would love to hear it, see if
Right.
it's true.
The uh, the other thing that you made me think of with that story is that based on the limited excavations we've done on the moon, the regolith on the surface of the moon is older than the geology on the inside of the moon, as far deep as we've excavated.
Okay, this is a part of science that I haven't wrapped my mind around. If we're assuming that the substance on the surface of the moon is greatly made up of space particles over millennia
Hmm.
settling because there's not enough atmosphere for it to burn up on entry and not enough, all the effects we have on Earth with, electrical ionosphere and all that stuff to provide some shielding.
Hmm.
Well, depending on where all that stuff in space came from, it could be much, much older or younger than the
Yeah.
moon.
Right.
And so I have the question, why the surprise and confusion?
I think it's mainly because we expect things on the surface of a planetary body to be the newest since it arrived after the formation of the planetary body.
Yeah, I heard an explanation one time, or a couple times, and basically what they were saying is when they date, matter, and
Hmm.
and this is a broad stroke, but at the very fundamental basics, as far as we know, all these elements are created in a star
Hmm.
and then at some point expelled out. Our sun, hydrogen, basic elements. There's a nuclear reaction and it creates, iron, it being a big one, and other basic elements,
Hmm.
heavier elements,
Right.
and other suns, bigger suns can make bigger. And the basic age is based off when the sun created those elements. And then you can, monitor the rate of decay, and then, of course, there's other factors that go into dating things, based off of what we know they were exposed to, et cetera. I think just from those kind of observations and comments, it would make me think the assumption is all planetary bodies in our solar system came from the same original source, meaning the same sun. And, there's a fair amount of scientific research and study done saying that, you know, the most of the stuff in our solar system is from our solar system. But there are things that we track that come in from outside the solar system
Well, there have been a few, but only a few.
that we know of, that we've tracked.
Yeah, in the time that we've been able to track
It's
extrasolar.
pretty short.
Yes, valid.
Yeah.
You've got Three Eye Atlas, which is the source of a lot of conspiracy talk. I've been following that fairly closely just because I find it so interesting.
Yes.
China actually was the first country to ever land a spacecraft on the far side of the moon.
That's what I heard.
Yeah, so it's the Chang'e series of lunar landers. I think they're up to 6 now as of last year, 2024. And that would actually return the first ever samples collected from the far side of the moon.
Well, I heard a theory that Decepticons made it there first. I think we have video evidence.
Yeah, thanks to Michael Bay.
Yeah. Everything goes boom.
All right, there's one more story I wanted to share if I
Hit
can
me with it.
find it. So there was a break-in at a liquor store in Virginia not too long ago. Number of bottles were found broken on the floor. All the liquid was just all over the place. And when the owners, actually, I don't know if it was the owners or if police were called to the scene, but they found the suspect in the bathroom, drunk
Not surprised.
on whiskey by the toilet with a bunch of snacks around it. And they
That's a disgusting place to eat snacks, but when you're that drunk,
right. Yeah, anything works. And they were able to successfully identify the culprit as a raccoon.
at least he was wearing a mask.
This same raccoon is actually suspected in several other break-ins.
Yeah.
Yeah, and my main question was, how did this raccoon get inside? Apparently, it climbed in through the ductwork on the roof and came in through the ceiling.
So Santa Claus
Yeah, Santa Claus style.
or Die Hard.
Yep, it is the season of John McClane.
Well, that wasn't exactly the punchline I was expecting initially. It seems to fit.
Yeah.
So, what do they do with a suspected repeat offender raccoon?
I guess animal control has to get involved at that point.
All right.
And as Virginia is not one of the states in which you can legally own a raccoon as a pet, I don't know if they released it or what happened to it. But you can get your own trashed panda t-shirts online wherever fine t-shirts are sold.
So I actually looked up this story, and another news article said that they interviewed animal control,
Mhm.
and animal control said, "Well, because we think it's suspected in multiple break-ins
Mhm.
to this nature, we suggest businesses take appropriate measures to secure their business." And they asked animal control, "Well, can't you relocate it?" And they said, "Well, not only can we not keep it, which would then make it a pet, so we can't keep it in captivity. We're also not allowed to relocate."
Mm.
So yeah, I guess they're not anticipating, short of maybe a bad human interaction,
Mhm.
of ending these escapades. So this might be an interesting, funny story. the the fight of the drunk raccoon.
We will definitely keep an eye on this news piece.
I'm just glad that it wasn't in Florida
Yeah,
because we have enough of a reputation.
I know. No gators breaking into liquor stores, drinking whiskey by the toilet there.
No, that's Florida man bringing
Yeah.
gator into the liquor store. All right.
All right. We'd like to thank you for listening to Two Beards Debrief this week. We will be back next Sunday.
And if you please like the like button and subscribe and comment. Who knows? Maybe we'll feature a comment or chase down a story that you have an interest in.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.